The image of that day is permanently burned into my mind. It was September 3rd, 2002. Our country was still grieving from the attacks the year prior, and patriotism was at a 2-decade high. I'd just met my wife at a friend's birthday party a month earlier. Everything was looking rosy for me. Work was my only weak point, and when I say weak, I simply mean I was stuck in a rut. Not good, nor bad. A day or two before Halloween, I saw my chance to further myself in the company. There was an amazing opportunity opening up in Mexico City, but if I wanted to take advantage, I had to fly out as soon as possible. After discussing this with my boss, he gave me the okay to pursue it. I immediately purchased a plane ticket for midnight and landed just as the sun rose the next morning. And according to my contacts, the man I was planning to meet wouldn't be available until after 8 a.m. I took advantage of the gap in time by taking a nap. When I woke up, I took a quick shower and climbed into my best suit. I was about to make the most important contact in my life, and looking my best would be of the utmost necessity. As the time approached, I called down to the front desk to get me a taxi. I reached the lobby where a young man showed me to my ride. I was feeling good that morning, and in retrospect, I made a big mistake. Foolishly, I tipped the clerk a $50 bill. His eyes almost blew out of his head. In light of what happened, I'm almost positive he was the person who sold me out. From the hotel, the taxi driver took me to my meeting. We made small talk along the way. He agreed to wait for me. I estimated the meeting wouldn't be more than an hour, and he seemed happy for this. As for the meeting itself, it probably could have gone better, but my goal was ultimately achieved. I returned to the taxi, and we began the return trip to the hotel. My mood was somewhat darker, and I avoided any conversation. I was in the process of texting my boss when the car stopped abruptly. This caused me to be slammed into the back of the seat. Naturally, I was livid. The curses came fast and loose from my mouth. Just as I regained the seat positioning, I noticed another taxi was parked in front of us. The driver of my car was silent. This didn't stop me from asking what was going on. I now realized that he was well aware of what was happening and may have played his own part in it. If I hadn't been yelling like a madman, I may have noticed the guy standing outside my window a little sooner. I just happened to catch a flash in my peripheral vision. When I looked over, I was met with a gun pointed right at me. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I raised my hands to indicate I was no threat. The guy holding the gun yanked my door open and demanded I give him my money. I quickly complied. While this was happening, a voice in the back of my head was praying he wouldn't notice my watch. It was very special to me. It belonged to my father. He was gifted it by my mother on their 25th anniversary. I received it in his will when he passed in '97. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't wear something so valuable, especially in Mexico, but it had been good luck in the past and I needed it on this trip. All this caused me to hesitate when the gunman started yelling "watch" in broken English. I tried to pretend I didn't understand. He grabbed at my wrist with his empty hand instead. I stupidly yanked my arm away and he drove the pistol into my guts. Everything went into slow motion. I watched in horror as the hammer on the revolver began cocking back. He clearly wasn't messing around. I managed to get the watch off before the gun went off. He let off the trigger, just in time as far as I could tell. He ran back to the other taxi and they tore off down a side street. I was just beginning to see that I had been taken into the middle of nowhere. Not a soul was around and the buildings were barely standing upright. Had I been 10 years younger, I probably would have fought back. The environment in the taxi afterwards was chilling. I could see the driver's eyes darting back and forth in the rearview mirror. He didn't dare speak. He had to know I suspected him. Why hadn't he been robbed also? I now had an important decision to make. Was I going to the police or just returning to the hotel and then going to the airport? I was stuck between two decisions. It's no secret the Mexican police are corrupt. For all I know, even they could be complicit in the robbery. The angry side of me said to confront the hotel clerk. I took a few moments to consider my options and chose to cut my losses and just get out of Mexico. I told the driver to return to the hotel if he wanted to be paid. This wasn't my first rodeo after all. I never carried much cash on my person. What I left behind would be all but impossible to find if a hotel employee went snooping. Upon our return, I ran up to my room and retrieved the taxi money. I paid him without a word, and he took off just as silently. It was now time for the clerk to feel my wrath, and he greeted me with a fake smile and asked how things were going. In a calm but aggressive voice, I mentioned the robbery. I had no time for his false sympathy and informed him how his accomplices had gotten away with a mere $30 in cash. There was no way I was going to give him the satisfaction of knowing how badly the loss of my father's watch hurt me. He tried to deny it all, of course, but I wasn't hearing it. Not once did he offer to call the police. I told him that I knew what he'd done, and that I was going to make sure everyone I talked to was aware of what was happening in this hotel. I closed by calling him a low-life scumbag and made my way from my room. It wasn't much, but it was going to have to do. I went back to my room and gathered my things to leave. I paid for the hotel beforehand, and my plane ticket was a round trip. I had no further need of that place and its staff. There were several taxis waiting outside the hotel. I grabbed one and he drove me to the airport, and I had no further problems from then on. I had waited to notify my boss of the robbery until I returned to work. He was horrified, as you'd expect. I also made sure that he knew I was never returning to Mexico again. He could fire me if he wanted, but there was no amount of money that could draw me back there. To his credit, he was cool and understood my reservations. My next call was to the man I'd gone there to meet. I wasn't contacting him for any updates as much as letting him know that I'd be passing off any future dealings to another team member. When he inquired why, I told him about the robbery and stressed that I held him in no way responsible for it. He didn't say much other than he understood, and we ended the call. I must admit I was somewhat shocked when I heard that he had agreed to the deal. Even better, he would be coming to the US in the future as to prevent any further threats to our employees. I can't say for sure, but I kinda think he may have felt guilty, although I made it clear I didn't blame him. We've never talked about it, and that's fine with me. I'd rather forget about it myself. This will be my last time discussing the matter. There was one last call I had to make, and it was the hardest. The sadness in her voice upon hearing of the watch was crystal clear. Mom said she didn't blame me, but I could tell it hurt her soul to hear that. It was the first time I can remember crying since second grade. I've since purchased another date made the same year and had it inscribed with the same words as Dad's. I wear it every year at Christmas, and that's all. Mom loves seeing it, but I'm well aware it will never be a true replacement for the original.